Welcome.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure to introduce you to Martin LANDALUCE. We have been working together for about almost 20 years, and he's been so kind. He lives all around the world. He's been so kind to join us here. Is an example. Well, we can sit down. Yesterday we talked about the fact that the problem in Italy is that an entrepreneur sell either companies, the media immediately thinks about another, jewelry of the Italian entrepreneurship being sold to like financial investor or be sold to an international player. We're losing some of our jewels, some of our Italian jewels. You had a very similar experience. It's a French experience where an entrepreneur decides at a certain point to sell his company, to sell the company to a financial investor, and the family decide to go from one kind of entrepreneurship to a different kind of entrepreneurship. We also talked a lot about impact investing yesterday, and the LeDuc family decide to go from industrial business to a different kind, as I said, of entrepreneurship, funding the Foundation LeDuc, and as you can see here, their impact is improving the lives of people through cardiovascular research. Can you tell us the story about the LeDuc family, the fascinating story about the LeDuc family?
Thank you, Francesca. Jean and Sylvia LeDuc were a French couple. They had a linen supply business that was created by Jean LeDuc's grandfather back at the end of the 19th century. And he came with the idea of developing that business because he was a regular client to nightclubs and cabarets in Paris. And the owners were always complaining that the tablecloths and the napkins were getting stained and burned with cigars and wine. So it was very expensive to replace them. So he came with the idea of renting them out, and that's how the business started. There was a big utilization of those fabrics because they started in top-tier restaurants, and little by little they were being used at the end in public bathrooms, which at the time not many apartments in Paris had bathrooms, and they were being used as towels. It was a family business, but it was really in the late 70s, beginning of the 80s, when it started to be a much bigger, I wouldn't say conglomerate, but multinational. Jean and Sylvian decided to move to the US because with the socialist measures that Mitterrand put in place, they were concerned about the growth of the business, and when they were in their early 50s, they moved to a place called Culpeper in Virginia that Sylvian had trouble finding in the map, and they bought a small business that they grew also to be the biggest French private company in the US. So they really worked hard to make that story happen.
And then the family decide at a certain point to sell the company to private equity firm, to BC partner.
Yes, for them, especially for Jean, the business was his life, and they didn't have any children, and both, especially him, suffered from heart disease and wanted to give back to society, what he got from medicine. And he sold the company to BC Partners, private equity firm, with a certain unhappiness, because a certain bitterness, I would say, bittersweet, because he got a significant amount of money that he used to develop this foundation, but the company was really his baby. Yes. So, but the good thing is that he decided, I think much thanks to the U.S. education, to create this foundation, because it's quite uncommon in Europe, but it was uncommon when he created it. But the fact that he was living in the US helped him, develop that philanthropy side.
And so then you start really working with the family, with Sylviane and Jacques, when more or less at the time when they decide to sell the company, and they went from owning a company to a pool of money. What happened then?
Well, it was quite an experience. I mean, I had known the LANDALUCE since I was born, and Jean, as I said, the company was really his baby. Managing the money, it was not interesting for him at all. So he, when he sold the company, he decided to hire some banks, a few of the major banks that we all know, and gave them discretionary mandates, and there was not real diversification. Everyone was doing more or less the same, and as long as markets were doing fine, 97 and 98, things started to get a bit worse, and then things really collapsed. And
with a tech bubble, of course.
Yes, and we probably lost half of the, of the size of the endowment, which was extremely painful. And we did a lot of research, and through family connections and other clients that I heard about, I learned about the existence of Cambridge Associates, and I was telling you last night, I was in the island of Madeira solving some issues, and I picked up the phone and I called Jim Bailey, the founder, who listened to me, heard our problems, and we came and met him in, I think it was 2000 or 2001.
Yeah. 2001, yes.
Mm.
And so what started from there? How
Well,
did you develop your family office?
The most interesting thing was at the beginning, was to get educated in the process of an endowment model, how things work, the importance of asset allocation, and we got a very good. I mean, it took you to educate us a few months, if not a couple of years, until we really understood the constraints and the requirements of investing in a long-term portfolio, understanding the different asset classes, and diversification, avoiding conflict of interest, and also to make us understand that we should not expect market forecast, timing market, these kind of things which seem counterintuitive, as when you are working with an investor, you want those kind of answers immediately, and we understood that they cannot be there all the time.
So if you think about the principle that you apply, you talk about long-term diversification, predicting and non-predicting the market, asset allocation. What do you think are the most important element? If you go back to 20 years ago when everything started, you need to tell a new family office. What are those things that you really focus on?
I think long term, especially for families, it is something that should be the most important point. Understanding that there is volatility in the markets, and if you are willing to take a certain risk, you need to think long term. And as I said before, stick to your asset allocation if you have defined it according to your risk profile. And those, I think, would be the key points. Then there is a big component, which is the selection of managers in your portfolio. It was for us very counterintuitive that hiring good managers required a lot of work, and it was unthinkable for us to think that we have to go and visit managers and almost kneel so they could take our money, because they are normally oversubscribed or they're closed, and they're never there, marketing for clients. Some of them, you need to attract them as an investor, that they like your mission, that they like what to do in order for them to get your money. So that was quite a learning experience for us and also for the LANDALUCE. They would never thought that that could be the case.
How is invested your portfolio?
How
is invested the portfolio, right now? And has changed over this period? Has anything changed in the asset allocation, the risk profile of your portfolio?
It has. At the beginning, when we went from using several banks to having Cambridge as an advisor, things have changed a lot because the first few years the LANDALUCE were still alive, and they had gone through so many bad experiences with the traditional banks that their original mandate was not to lose the money. So you helped us put in place a very, very conservative asset allocation that helped us, that served us very well at the beginning, especially in 2002. And little by little, as long as we were getting more familiar with how the portfolio was reacting to different market conditions, we were adding more growth components. We started creating a private portfolio in 2004, which has served us very well. And now I think we have a quite, I won't say aggressive, but a growth-oriented portfolio, which was not the case at the beginning, which was much more, protection-oriented portfolio.
What's a part of the portfolio that you enjoy the most, and what's a part of the portfolio where you like to spend most of the time? Which manager do you enjoy most to talk about? Are the global macro manager in the hedge fund world, the fixed income manager, venture capital manager?
I enjoy I clearly prefer the venture and private equity managers, especially more growth-oriented things where you can see the development of companies. That's really where I like to go and visit managers. You hear real stories with other macro managers, and some of the hedge fund managers can be very real as well. But I like to feel the things that I hear about, and that happens much more in venture and private equity.
We were together in 2008, 2007, 2008, and it was not a good, a fun time. Did you panic? How did you react? What did you do? Did you change your portfolio? Do you remember what were some of the questions that you asked Cambridge Associates at that time?
Well, it was tough, but we were comfortable. I mean, we had lived through previous crises in a much worse situation. We saw that the market declines entered into was not forecasted but could be anticipated in some of the scenarios that you worked around, and we took the opportunity to rebalance and add some more equity or growth-oriented assets into the portfolio, which again it's hard to do, but when you trust the managers and advisors, it's an easy. I mean, it's easier to do, but it was difficult to see, but the portfolio performed well, and the protection measures that were put in place worked.
We talked a lot about governance yesterday. We haven't touched that part. We focus on the investment side, but there is also the governance. So how are you structured? How the decisional process are made at the Duke Foundation?
It's a very lean organization, and I think that it is something very important for decision-making process, because you have to be sometimes quick in taking decisions in order not to have see opportunities disappear. But we have an investment committee formed by 5 people. 3 of them we are in daily contact, so it happens, things can move very rapidly. But it is our goal to keep that governance structure as lean as possible, because what we see in other organizations, that when they grow, they tend to be very static, and politics starting to get involved, and that's something we really don't want to see happening in our organization. So to keep it as small as possible.
And extremely efficient and very low cost. Can you tell us a few words about the foundation with Duke? What does it do? What's the mission of the foundation?
Well, it is there, but it was not, originally it was not that. Jean was operated at the Mayo Clinic in the 70s. He had one of the first coronary bypass ever made in the world. And he was very grateful to the Mayo Clinic, so he wanted to build a similar facility with Mayo in Paris. But due to some political issues, it didn't happen, so he changed the mission towards research. What we do now is fund research against cardiovascular diseases through very specific projects that we call the Transatlantic Networks of Excellence. The idea is that we put together different teams from the world that are working on the same topic, and the fact that they exchange information, meet and work together make that things happen at a much faster pace. That collaboration is very important. We are seeing very good results. We fund every year between 4 and 5 of these networks, and they receive a $6 million grant, each of them, every year. So it has a significant impact. It's not well known by the general public, but it's very well known on the scientific world, and that's by design. The LANDALUCE, wanted to have a very low profile, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So as I said at the beginning, the family went from one kind of entrepreneurship to the philanthropic entrepreneurship, and they've been a very successful case of impact investing through their foundation. You also have a philanthropic venture firm that is part of the foundation with Duke. So can you talk about Broadview and what is the mission of Broadview?
Sure. After 2008, when markets collapsed, many of the venture capital firms focused on healthcare decided to have a less risky approach to new investments. So there was a big gap between basic research and clinical application. So we decided to launch, within the umbrella of the charitable trust that also supports Fondation Duke, to launch similar to a venture capital fund, but we call it a venture philanthropy fund, with the idea to see early stage companies, sometimes they have not even been formed, in the area of cardiovascular and neurovascular space, with the idea of providing them with the initial sources of funding that would allow them to go through the first clinical trials, proof of concept clinical trials, and if they are successful, attract more capital and then be suitable for institutional investors. And we're quite pleased. We call this fund Broadview Ventures. It's based in Boston, and we invest every year between $7 and $10 million in new companies, and with the help of a very sound and prestigious strategic advisory board, we make those investments, and we are able to leverage our original investment by 8. So by every dollar we invest, the companies are able to attract 8 more, which we consider from other investors.
Early investors.
So we think that's a big success. We have had a few exits already, some of them very successful with multiples of 12, 14, but it is not our goal. Our goal is not to make money. Of course, it's welcome. But it will be recycled in the trust fund for further support of the foundation or Broadview. But our goal is, we consider that our mission is accomplished if the science has reached the patient as fast as possible, not if the company has been sold for a big multiple and never gets to the patient. So we're establishing metrics of success by the number of patients that are impacted by the companies that we are funded, not by the money that we're getting out of our investments.
I want to see if there is any question, any observation from.
Sorry, can you give us some color in relation to how the who's taking the decision at the foundation level? Because we understood there's an investment committee and that there's a charitable trust, but who is basically governing the this foundation that should be probably a perpetual or something like that?
There is a protector at the level of the trust fund, which we're also at the same. It's the same people that are at the level of the foundation board, and there is a mechanism to appoint successors at that board level. Currently, there are two individuals that have more weight on the decision-making process. One is the scientific director and myself, because we both had a very long time relationship with LANDALUCE. They knew us since we were children. But we acknowledge that there is a big concentration of power in us, and that's not going to happen after we're not around. There will be equal power between the 5 people that are part of that protector board. I don't know if that clarifies your question. Currently, I must say it's more me who has the power to take investment decisions, but of course, I don't do anything without speaking and consulting with the other rest of the board. But again, it's not an ideal thing. It's in transition.
So I think that it's an interesting point. I mean, governance, we talked about governance, and there is a constant evolution, I will say, improvement of a governance structure. 15 years ago, probably there was not a process as well established as it is today, but even today you still find some elements of improvement that you are in your list of to-do list for the future.
It is, and the mechanisms have been put in place. And if something were to happen to David, is his name, and myself, that thing would start working immediately already. So it's tested, because we organize these meetings. Things happen on a normal basis. I have never had to exercise any kind of veto power or had confrontation with anyone. There is a consensus generally, and we hope that will be the case when we are not around. But we don't want to have a big, we want it to be lean. So it's very important the qualities of the people that are part of that board. We're extremely demanding on what to expect from the people that are part of that board. Being technically capable, of course, is one of them. Avoiding conflict of interest and of morality, of course. Those are the key factors that we try to find in this book.
We are in a low return environment. Interest rates are low. Making money it's been difficult this year, and it probably continue to be very, very difficult. But you have people, you have science, you have people that have disease that depends on you, depends on your spending. So, are you making any change in your portfolio? Are you chasing the return? Are you taking more risk? Is anything that different than you are doing?
No, we continue. Our goal is not to take risk in an environment that we're not familiar with. We prefer to continue stay the course, and if something happens in the market, then we will take other investment decisions. But for the time being, we stay the course, and we continue to spend as if we were in a regular market environment. It's our goal to continue to support. it's our mission to continue to support these research teams and these investments, and we will continue to do so, even if, you know, we did that when markets were collapsing. It's not under these circumstances that things are going to change.
We had some great wine last night provided by the Lunelli family. Among the many activities of the Leduc family, you also owns and manage a vineyard in California. So it's your opportunity to do some advertising on the California wine. So tell us about how the vineyard came as part of the overall, family, business, and what's the mission right now, and how is the vineyard linked with the foundation?
Well, I can advertise it, but they cannot buy it here. So I think it's
so good. Go to California.
It's a very small production, but sorry, no, not in Amazon, no. Then I told you that in '82 the Leducs moved to Virginia, and they became residents there. The company still was very small, just one plant in that small village called Culpeper. So Jean bought a nice property there to plant wines based on Thomas Jefferson's idea, because when Thomas Jefferson came to France, he tried to do the same thing in Monticello, was the name of his property. So Jean was inspired by him and planted a vineyard in Virginia with the help of a very famous French enologist. Jean was extremely stubborn, as many good entrepreneurs. And after 8 or 10 years, we're planting the vines because they were freezing. And the enologist said, if you want to have a good wine, you'd better go to California. So he bought something in California, in Napa Valley, a vineyard called Eller's Estate, which is a very nice one. It's mainly Cabernet Sauvignon, a bit of Petit Verdot, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc. And we made some Bordeaux blends there, which is it's a bit unusual for that, because there is more like cab-oriented properties. And it's all organic and biodynamic, and it's selling quite well. It's stronger than the wines here, more powerful. But going back to your question on managers, it's always you can tell them about your mission, how much you help patients with research and with investments, but when you tell them that in the trust fund there is a vineyard in Napa Valley, they all get fascinated. So that's what it's.
So that's a very good selling point to enter in close and difficult to access.
Very good and surprisingly.
And the sales, the revenues of the wine are linked in some way with the foundation.
Well, until very recently, it's been more like a burden for the trust fund, because it's been cash flow negative for many years. But it's been offset by the capital appreciation. As rare assets, they continue to increase in value, because they are in America. Having a vineyard in Napa Valley is like it's a trophy asset. So everyone who makes money wants to have a vineyard there. So it is a very decorrelated market. It's normally increases in value on a regular basis, and businesses normally don't make any sense, because the owners spend crazy amount of money for something that will never be profitable, with the idea of that they will be able to sell them at a higher price in the future. But now ours is cash flow positive, and we have the intention of keeping it in the trust fund for many years.
Just like a fun fact, but when we start working, you also own a caviar farm that wasn't as successful as a vineyard. As a good friend.
But going back to talking about entrepreneurship, when Jean, in 98, 99, portfolios were, we were losing 3 or 4% every month for several months. He was not looking at those numbers. He was looking at his vineyard, his caviar fish farm.
So it was a good distraction. They were a good distraction.
But that's what he liked to do, not really. So I had to convince him, or tell him that one decline of one day of the portfolio was worth all the assets, the rest of the assets altogether. So, but going back to the caviar fish farm, it was a different business because it was just the stock of the, the sturgeon was the value of the business, and it was very vulnerable to any kind of thing. So, as you know, there are many fish farms in Italy now, and there are more and more everywhere. So we thought that the price of caviar would go down, and there was not real estate value or anything. So we decided to sell it.
Good. There are no other questions. I want to thank you very much, and hopefully you brought a piece of the work that we do and how an entrepreneur can move on from an industrial entrepreneur to do something else.
I read in some, foundation information about the first generation of founders can be, and I'm sorry to say that because I love them as my parents, but can be the biggest enemies to a foundation because they think that they can extrapolate their thinking process from the business to investment management and running a foundation, and it's totally different. So sometimes you have to protect the foundation from the founders, and it wasn't the case in our case.
In other case, you need to protect the value of the company from the next generation. So, for the second generation, the third generation. You didn't have, the Leduc family did not have that problem, but there was still, another baby that was created from the first baby.
And I hope it will live many years, thanks to your work.
Thank you very much, Martin.